All right, it is 9 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. My name is Elise Fry. I am the Test Administration and Formative Assessment Specialist with the Utah State Board of Education. And we are going to be reviewing some information regarding the high school benchmarks administration through the Pearson system. On our call today, we also have Kim Rathke, our test coordinator, as well as Don Brandt and Tyler Hicks from Pearson. They will be monitoring the chat and helping out with things. If you have questions at any time, go ahead and drop them in the chat, or if you're comfortable, you're welcome to come off of mute as well. And we'll go ahead and get started. So we're going to review the Utah High School benchmarks and the navigation through the Pearson system using the Utah Aspire Plus Resource Center. We'll look at the menus that are available through Pearson Access Next, as well as the reporting functionality that is available through benchmarks. And that way you can share the information with the appropriate audiences who you work with. So the intent of the benchmarks is they're still considered secure. And so broadcasting them to take all together would be considered inappropriate. So when students log in, they can take the test, but teachers can still review that data and use it as a reteaching or formative tool as needed. So if you see a question with really poor results, you could use the preview reporting option, and we'll go over that a little bit later, to display that question to the class and kind of work through it together after the initial instruction has occurred and the first test has been completed, like for a bell work or a reteaching moment. And just also as a reminder, you can't copy and paste questions into other resources or post PDFs of the test in other places. So just some things to be aware of with security of the benchmark questions. So the benchmarks are available currently and will be through the end of June. These are course-based and they're available for ELA, math, and science. They tend to be between 2 and 15 questions depending on the content area, and they can be assigned and administered as many times as the teacher desires. So the Resource Center is going to look a little bit different than it has in the past. So in an effort to streamline the process and the resources that are available through Pearson Access Next, we have eliminated some of the tabs across the top. So if you look, we've got tabs for Pearson Access Next, which is where you'll deliver the test, a tab for Utah Aspire Plus, a tab for high school benchmarks, and a tab for support. Okay. So if you haven't already, you might want to bookmark this site just so that it's easier to access. I have highlighted the URL on the page there, utah.pearsonaccessnext, all one word, .com. And when we're looking at things, we're actually going to skip over PAM for a little bit. We'll look at that later. And we're going to skip Utah Aspire Plus completely because we will review that tab in the spring prior to UA Plus administration. But we're going to look really specifically here at the high school benchmarks tab. So by clicking that tab at the top or the resources button that's at the bottom, you will be able to access anything you need for high school benchmark administration. Specifically, I would draw your attention to component number 5 that houses the benchmark test administration manual. Okay. All of these numbered items here are their own drop down, kind of like a hamburger menu. And we'll look at the other components in a little more depth in the second portion of the training. But be aware that in the preparation drop down, that is where you will find student tutorials and question samplers, which used to be their own tab across the top. But the same information is there. It's just dropped under here for preparation for high school benchmarks. And these are designed to help students with the testing environment and the interface itself, using the system and becoming familiar with the types of items that they might see. The technology dropdown houses any information for the test nav download, which is the secure browser that you will use, or that students will use for taking the test. And then the user guide dropdown has some links for support. And then there's also the technology support office hours option if you choose to take advantage of that, if you need some help. The support tab across the top is available. If you're ever stuck, there's a help desk number, there's a direct chat option, as well as links if you have forgotten any of your login credentials. This is a list of the available testlets, which are there for teachers to use. There's multiple testlets as well for each standard. So you might find 2 or 3 test options for each of these components. So now we'll look at the PAN tab. From Pearson Access Next, or PAN as we call it for short, you can navigate to the production environment, which would be the blue site where you can manage any administrative task for testing, as well as the training site, which is the brown one. This is like a practice environment. It's like a sandbox. There's no live forms, but you can practice adding students to sessions or moving students. You're not going to find reporting capabilities in there, but you can practice any of the setup that would need to happen prior to testing. So on ut.pearsonaccessnext.com, you will find this sign-in screen. From the sign-in screen, there are options, again, if you forgot your username and password, as well as help desk contact information and some helpful links. As a friendly reminder, your username is typically your email account. And if you haven't logged in for a while, usually that's more than a year, the system is going to move your account to an inactive status. So that would need to be fixed or updated. If you have trouble signing in at any time, feel free to reach out to me and I can figure out why you might be having some struggles logging into your account. Once you've logged in, you'll want to verify the information in the black ribbon that's up at the top. You'll want to make sure that the correct administration year has been selected, because sometimes it might default to last year's administration or to Utah Aspire Plus information rather than for benchmark information. And because we want to be focusing on the Utah Core Standard benchmarks for 2022, we want to make sure that that is what has been selected in that ribbon. You'll also want to check your organization in the top corner. Just make sure that the organization or the LEA that you are associated with is there in that drop down as well. So we're going to spend the bulk of our time looking at these menus and the features they have which relate to the benchmark testlets. It's important to note that those menu locations change position as soon as you select one from the drop-down. So they'll appear at the top, kind of like a toolbar under that black ribbon. But the menus are the same. So if I toggle back to the previous slide, you'll notice that our options are setup, testing, reports, and support. And if I toggle back, we have setup, testing, reports, and support here as well. When you click on one of them, their respective drop-down menus will appear for more information or detail relating to that menu. We're going to start with the setup menu today, and you'll want to think of this as the preparing for testing session. Since you can set up and modify accounts, you can submit student transfer requests, all the things that you really need to have done and in place before you start sessions. This is where you're going to be able to complete all of that work. So the first drop-down menu option under setup is import-export data. And this is where you can use spreadsheet methods as a shortcut to complete any bulk tasks, like assigning accommodations is one. And I've put both types of screenshots in here so that you can kind of see the difference. So if you click on it from the home site with the hamburger menu, or if you choose to click on it when you're already in Pearson Access Next. As a reminder, you'll view those menus those 2 different ways. So depending on how you choose to access it. The next menu listed under setup is students. And this is where you're going to be able to manage and view students' tests as well as their accommodations. If you need to complete a specific task for a student, you can select that task here from the Select Tasks dropdown, or even better, this is my favorite hack, I think, in Pearson Access Next. You can load all of the tasks by using the drop-down menu arrow that's next to the Start button. This makes it so that all of the items that were listed in the tasks list individually appear across the ribbon at the top of student profiles. So you can actually accomplish multiple tasks rather than just one based on your selection. So to select the student or groups of students you wish to work with, you're going to click the checkbox or checkboxes next to their names. And once you've selected your students and your task or the all tasks option, it's going to open the information for those students. And they're going to be listed individually on the left-hand side with their information appearing kind of on that main screen. And again, remember by selecting that all tasks function, all of them are going to load at the same time across the top rather than just selecting one. So if I had only selected student PNP settings, that's the only option that would appear. Where I selected all tasks, I'm getting all of the options that are available under the student menu. Note that most of this information is grayed out, meaning you can't edit it. However, you can enter a student's preferred first name if desired. Back to that black ribbon at the top, you'll see those other tabs since I selected the all tasks option. And when viewing the student PNP or personal needs profile, you'll see all of the embedded supports and accommodation options that are available. We're going to look into this in more detail with the following training. So if you are wondering how to set accommodations through PAN, stay tuned to that one. But you can set the accommodations at the subject level. You'll want to have all of this information in the system prior to preparing your sessions, because it really will make a headache for you if you have neglected the student PNP prior to setting those sessions, especially with any students who are receiving accommodations through testing. When you finish working in the tasks for students, just make sure that you save before you exit. So any changes that you make will be reflected in the system. So now we'll move on to organizations. Again, there's two views based on if you're on the home page or if you've already logged into Pearson Access Next. The next menu that's listed is this organization one, and it's just to see which organizations are associated with a user ID. So if a teacher works in multiple schools, you should see more than one organization listed with that teacher's account. But for the most part, you're going to see your specific LEA. With the users menu, if you have teachers or proctors or anyone under your LEA level account, you're going to be able to manage those and view any of their selected roles, their user ID, any of those things. We're going to explore this in more detail as well. So for user tasks, when you select that user menu, again, you'll notice you can create and edit accounts, you can reset passwords or delete and restore users from that task menu. Again, you can select just one, or if you want to be able to do all of those things for various users, if you just go over to the start menu and select all tasks, all of those things will be available to you. Similar to the student menu, you just select the user the very same way you'd select students. You just click the box next to the accounts that you wish to view or edit. If you're creating a new user, that little option is going to appear at the very top with the plus button, and you can select users below that who already have accounts associated with Pearson Access Next. The user details are going to appear in the body of the screen. If you're creating a new user, you will need to add the organizations that you want associated with that account, as well as the permission role they should have, because there's a few to choose from. The account type, you'll just want to make sure it's enabled. And then you put the first and last name of the user as well as the email. The email usually autofills into the username, but if it doesn't, just copy and paste it below. The active begin date is when you want the account to become active and available to the user. I would then recommend leaving the active end date blank just to ensure the account remains active. If it hasn't been accessed for a long period of time, if you put in the active end date, the user is no longer going to be able to access the account past that. So there are times when a user will contact me and say that they need their account enabled, but what actually happened was an active end date was put in like the last day of a school year. And so they try to log in the next year, and really all I need to do is go and delete that active end date. So you can leave that blank. Okay. Any changes you make here, again, just make sure that you save them with the create button. So again, because I selected that all tasks banner to begin with, I can reset passwords or delete and restore users right from this page. I don't need to go back to the home page because I selected the all tasks. When I'm done editing all of these accounts, I can just click the exit tasks button that is in the upper right and move on to my next job that I need to do. So the next option menu after users is the work request. Work requests are the way that you can request an enrollment transfer from another school or another LEA. This is what those drop-down menus look like for work requests, but we're going to go into this more detail with the later training, okay, and how to be able to submit those work requests. Next, we are down to the testing menu. In the testing menu, you'll be able to verify students' tests. You can create testing sessions as needed, but know that for the benchmarks, students are automatically loaded into available sessions through UTrex. You only have to create testing sessions if students need to retake a test. So when we look at this menu, our first option is the student tests option. And this is just going to allow you to see which tests are available for students to take. So it's very similar to the student menu in that you'll have a list organized by student name, their school, and the testlets that are assigned to them. So as far as tasks go from this screen, the only thing you can do here is really edit the tests that are available for students to take. So if I were to select one, it would open this screen and it would show all of the details associated with the test. It's going to show the student, the school information, as well as any accommodations that have been applied. This is not an editable screen. Note that most of these boxes are grayed out. Any edits to this are going to be made in the PNP screen that we're going to go over a little bit later in the comprehensive training, but that you saw a little glimpse of just a little bit ago. The second option here with the testing menus is the sessions. All sessions are retrieved from UTrex, and it's going to auto create the sessions for which students are available to be placed in. Just as a note, if you're not seeing this long list of sessions, you might need to click the search drop down and select the box show all results. All of these sessions have students in them. You can see the count though as 1. These are just sample sessions. Yours are going to look a little bit different. This also shows them as in progress, but know that when you look at them from your side, they should show as not prepared when you first log in. You can filter which sessions have been started or not using the filters on the left-hand side of the screen. And you can filter by session status, organization, test, pretty much all the things, okay? When I say session status, I mean if the session has been stopped or prepared, if there's errors, if it's ready, if it's in progress, or if it hasn't been prepared. You can also filter by organization or school. You can filter by the testlet itself. They are organized by subject, grade, content, as well as the form that they are associated with and the date range. So whether it was scheduled to be assigned or not yet. After using the filters, you can select whatever sessions you want to manage. When we get to the Utah Aspire Plus, you're going to be managing significantly more sessions, but with benchmarks, there might only be 1 or 2 at a time. There are lots of tasks within your sessions task. Just as the other menus have functioned, you can select one task to focus on, or you can do the select all option from the start menu, which tends to be my preferred way, just because I like to be able to see all of my options, especially if I am completing more than one task at the time. So the taskbar at the top here, you can create a session, and this becomes helpful if you have a student who needs to retake a particular benchmark testlet. So you can create a new retest session and just add the specific students who need to retake the test. You can also delete sessions if you don't end up needing them. You can also just leave them alone though. Deleting them will remove them, but you can just ignore that they exist too. You don't have to delete them if you're not going to use them. Students can be added or removed. You can also generate or print your testing tickets and lock and unlock sessions so that they are accessible or not accessible to students from the screen. So the manage side over here that's opposite tasks is kind of like a shopping cart. It's going to hold all of the sessions that you've selected until you deselect them or until you don't want to work with them anymore. So you're going to see right now I have 0 sessions selected, and that changes based on what you choose from the session display menu. And you can clear them out by selecting the blue clear link that will appear that's there next to the number. So going to students in sessions can be found on 2 different drop-down menus from the main page or from PAN, as well as the Go to Students in Sessions link. that appears next to sessions. And I actually tend to use that one more regularly than going out to the menu. So just know that that little link is there next to sessions. If you're already in the sessions menu, you can go to students just by clicking this link that's right here. You can see the session I selected from the previous screen. So now I've got 3 sessions selected, and we can go back to that session screen that says go to sessions in the blue bar, which would allow you to add other sessions to that shopping cart if you needed to add more, if you neglected one, or if you needed to add a secondary one. So prior to preparing any session, you'll want to ensure that all student accommodations have been set in that PNP, because once the session's prepared, making those changes becomes pretty laborious. If you don't assign them, they won't have the accommodations for that session, and you'd actually have to remove the student individually from the session, add the accommodations, and then put the student back. So I can't reiterate enough to you that all accommodations need to be set before preparing any sessions at all. That's probably the biggest takeaway from this training that I could ask. So the resources dropdown that's up here in that manage option is where you can print testing tickets. There are options. You can print per page. You can print multiple per page. One per page is easily used as scratch paper if needed. Once you have them printed, students can get logged into TestNav. To do that, there's the green download button. Again, you'll want to make sure that TestNav is already downloaded on your devices prior. But this, if you need any information regarding the TestNav thing, remember that there's the support option, and then there's also the technology drop down in the resource center if you have questions regarding TestNav. So for filtering as far as the testing menu, you can filter through the students in the session by organization. You can filter by individual students through their SSID or a local ID, their name, the test status, as well as student test status. All right, for reporting, as a heads up, if you only have a Proctor level access account, you are not going to be able to review reports. And just as a heads up, when you log in, if you feel like you should have access to reporting, you'll just want to contact your LEA assessment director, who can determine if your account needs to have updated permission. So if we have any teachers who are attending this training that are not with an LEA level access account or possible Proctor, just know that if you contact your assessment director, they can look into getting the correct permissions associated with your account. So when it comes to these, Proctors can administer a test, but know that they can't see teacher data. Teacher accounts, you're going to be able to do both. You can both administer tests as well as view results through the reporting. This is the one menu we're actually going to skip around rather than just going chronologically, because the test preview report is actually really cool, and it's super interesting prior to testing rather than after. This report is going to give teachers the opportunity to preview the questions that appear on each of the testlets. So you can review the questions to determine which testlet is most appropriate for administration in your class. We addressed this at the beginning of the training, but these are formative tools. So if you see a question with really poor results, you can use the preview report to display the question to the class and work through it after it has been completed. So the reports menu here with that test preview report, you can use the drop-down menu and select the testlet that you want to preview. So if I'm a secondary Math 1 teacher, I'm going to scroll down and I just want to look specifically at the secondary Math 1 items. And I notice here with algebra, I have 3 forms to choose from. When I selected form B, I was able to then see the number of questions. I can see that this testlet has 11 questions associated with it. And the questions, as well as any stimuli associated with them, also appear in the space that's to the right of this menu. This shows me that based on the standard I selected, there is one question on the secondary math algebra 1 form 1 which assesses that standard. So I can see question 7 being the specific question that goes along with the standard that I selected. Okay, and again, I'll be able to see any question. So I can see here the question says the table lists the X and Y value of a line. Below that, there is the table. There are the answers that are options to select from. So you can preview what students will see. So now we're going to hop back up to the operational reports. So these are informational. They're like student registration summaries and reports regarding online testing. As you select a reporting category from the menu on the left, the information is going to populate to the screen with the various reports you can access if you choose to. We're going to skip reporting groups and published groups and look at the on-demand report. The on-demand report provides a school-wide list of student results, and each student has a percent that they earned on each testlet. And so teachers and administrators have access to the on-demand reports. Tech staff and proctors do not, again, so only teachers and administrators are going to be able to view this report. This information can be downloaded into multiple formats, which you will have the same information that's displayed on the screen. So you notice there's the cactus, the student number, the last name and first name of the student, the raw score, points possible, the percentage correct, the date that they submitted the test, the name of the test, the class that it was assigned with. Okay, all of that appears there. For the student performance item level report, this report shows how well students performed on individual items. So this screen also shows us the students and the forms that they've completed. So I can see the names of the students, what they completed, as well as their score with the points correct and the points possible. If you select the little blue eye that's next to the student name and SSID, it's actually going to open a new screen that has a lot more detailed data for students as far as relating to the testlet that you've selected. And this is kind of cool because you can see the student information up at the top, as well as how many questions were on the testlet, what the correct response was, how the student responded, their performance, and it matches a little key that's down at the bottom there. You can see that it's a little circle that's going to fill in kind of like a pie piece almost. If it was answered correctly, it's going to have the green checkbox. If it was partially correct, you'll see the half circle. If it was incorrect, you'll see the open circle. If the student didn't respond at all, there will be the dashes. Okay. You can then see the points that were earned, the points that were possible, the standard that's associated with the question, and then you can also see standard descriptions below. So it will tell you the standard that it was associated with in detail. For the standards analysis report, this report shows the standards that were assessed through the test questions and information on how the students performed on those questions specifically. So you can filter on the left. This example is specific to English grade 10 editing. So you can see that the testlet itself had only 2 questions associated with it. And each of the questions shows which standards are tested through that question. You can also see the number of students who got it correct, incorrect, or if any partial credit was awarded. This information can also be downloaded and printed if desired. And this is kind of your final reminder that there are 2 ways that you'll view the menus. The hamburger menu that's there on the left only appears the very first time you log in. Once you click one of those options, those menu options will kind of move and transition to the top of the screen underneath the menus. So the one on the left, again, is through the very first when you log into PAN, and then the second one is what it looks like once you're in and once you're working, and that's what it will remain unless you go back to the home screen. So for support, documentation provides any of the available documents, any forms, any accommodated forms. You can filter on these as well. Customer support's also there, as well as some helpful links. If you click that documentation menu, it looks like this. Again, it's an overwhelming almost amount of information that you can access through the support menu. Again, there are PDF versions of all of the tests, as well as any of the accommodated forms. And then over on the right, information regarding any customer support information that would be helpful links. At this point, so far, do we have any questions regarding just basics of how to administer the tests? Or if you need me to go back to anything specifically.
Elise, just as a comment here, there's
Yes.
nothing in the chat.
Okay. Then for better or worse, friends, we have about a half an hour between this and our more comprehensive training. I'm going to stay on, and Dawn and Tyler and Kim will as well, so we can answer any questions. If you had something more specific that maybe was just related to your specific situation, this is a great time to ask them. If you had enrolled in both trainings, you're welcome to take a quick break here, grab a drink, and then come back and join us. We're using the very same Zoom link, so you don't need to close this one. And again, if you have questions, this is a great time to ask them in between. Or obviously as well, if you were only joining us for the first just review basics, you're also free to log off if you have no other questions. Are the benchmarks required? No, they're not required at all. They're strictly optional, and your teachers decide whether to use them or not. That becomes, I think, more of like a local decision. I know that there are some LEAs that may require a specific benchmark, but it's kind of, or the teachers might even choose to just use certain ones or to not use certain ones, but they are not required at all.
So if I want to use benchmarks in my classroom, I think I missed that because I logged on a little late. Do I need to go through my LEA proctor or ask to be a proctor? How can I go about that?
So you can use them as a teacher. The sessions are already created. They are created, and you're going to basically most likely, if I remember correctly, Dawn and Tyler will probably have to help me out with this. It's going to be sorted based on your cactus number. And so any of the courses that would be available through the courses that you teach are going to start with your cactus number. And then the students are already loaded based on what information is sent from Utrex. The only reason that you would have to create a session is if you chose to re-administer for like a retest for a certain group of students.
And I know this is probably a silly question too. Do I just go to this site with the USB? Do I go to Data Gateway?
For test administration?
For like benchmarks.
Okay, so for benchmarks, you'll go to utah.pearson. I just put the site in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome. And so to administer the benchmark, there will be tabs across the top. To administer the benchmark, you'll click on PAN or Pearson Access Next. But for any information regarding the benchmark, like the benchmark test administration manual, if you want to double check configuration or technology, You can click on the Utah High School Benchmarks tab across the top for that information.
We used the benchmarks quite a bit last year, and one of the concerns that came up is there some kind of answer key for the technology enhanced items? I see that you can pull up the individual student score report and look at and see the correct answer for like multiple choice questions, but does the state have the answer key for other other items available?
I want to say yes. Tyler and Don, am I making this up? I feel like under reporting, the answer keys are there. Is that true?
Sorry, Lisa. Yeah, I'm going in to verify right now
Okay.
to see if those are out there. I'll get right back
I
with
couldn't
you.
remember after the changes that we made if that had showed up somewhere else.
Yeah, because you can see, like, I'm pulling up one right now from a benchmark that we gave a few weeks ago. And like for answer number 5, for the correct answer, they get N/A, so N/A, and then a correct answer for the multiple choice section. But the teachers have never had access to the answer keys. And when we've looked at some of the questions, like even though we all have degrees in the subject, sometimes it was a little like, there was a lot of debate over what the actual correct answer was.
Any other questions while Tyler verifies that? Happy to answer any you've got till we get started again at 10.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that we have an answer key document, Elise. We do cover the benchmarks that are covered in each testlet, but we don't currently have an answer key document. So that's out
Okay,
there.
thank you.
Mhm.
It would really be helpful if we had an answer key available someplace, because I sometimes have to give my students the paper test, the PDF test,
Okay,
and I have to grade it then, and I want to make sure I'm giving the proper answers on it.
that's good feedback. Thank you.
Again, I'm pretty new to this, and so I apologize if
You're just fine.
mundane, but I just went to go and log in, and is our username our cactus,
Your username is your email.
our email, and
Yes.
then our password is our cactus, or
That all depends. You can always use the forgot password option though.
okay, I will use it.
That is a nice, handy little tool.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's also handy when you can get a hold of support, because the thing that wasn't going to let me in at all, so they were able to get it all sorted out.
And just as kind of a reminder with the benchmarks, you can review that data with students after giving the test, not during the test or prior to it. The preview option there to be able to view is meant to be used as that formative tool following administration, not prior to administration. You can review it yourself prior, but not with students. Yeah, and Kim even dropped in the chat. That's a great point. You can review the tests before administering to make sure it meets the instructional goals that you had for your class.
Do I need to contact my LEA, or like you said, Nancy, because when I got in and reset my password, it said that that I do not have access to this. So who do I contact to get access?
To get access to,
Yeah, to be able to go in and do the benchmarks and.
interesting. You could contact your assessment director.
Okay, that's what I'll do.
Start there, and if there's any issues, your assessment director can also reach out to me.